Welcome to the 902 Podcast, the official podcast of the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office in Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm Captain John Vick, and I want to thank you for tuning in. This podcast will give you an inside look at LSO with topics and guests to discuss public safety issues impacting Lancaster County. Be sure to subscribe for highlights on news, cases, and the people working for you at LSO. You can also follow us across social media by searching for @LSO Nebraska. That's @LSO Nebraska on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Welcome to the 902 Podcast. We are here today with Sheriff Wagner and Chief Deputy Houchin in studio. Thanks for being here, guys.
You bet. Thanks for having us.
Thanks. And special guest today is Deputy Jarod Brabec. Jarod, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Today we're going to be talking primarily about LSO's Bearcat and armored vehicles that have been at the Sheriff's Office. It's a topic that's come up recently in the media, and Jarod's obviously had a lot of experience with that with the True Team. But before we get into that, Jarod, we wanted to talk a little bit just about you, get to know you and your background. So help us out. Where are you from? How did you get here?
I'm originally born and raised in Lincoln, Nebraska. I went to high school here at Southeast, went to University of Nebraska, graduated from there. And after college, I moved away for a little while, lived in Montana, actually. And then I moved back here, and not too long after.
You were a Wrangler, weren't you?
I was basically a Wrangler.
Okay.
I wore Wranglers, but I basically moved back and became a sheriff's deputy.
So don't just stop there. Well, tell us about Montana. Is it like the Yellowstone show or what?
I was working in a job in a cubicle, and that was not really my thing, so to speak, and I wanted something a little more exciting. And so there was a opportunity to work at a timeshare ranch in southwest Montana.
Okay.
And I'm an outdoorsman. I like to hunt and fish.
Yeah.
And so I applied for a job with them. It has a Lincoln connection. There's a guy from Lincoln that was one of the owners of it. And so I applied for a job with this basically timeshare ranch. They did hunting, fishing. They had horses, a working cattle ranch. It was on the Big Hole River, which is one of the best fly fishing rivers in the entire nation. And I've applied for a job up there doing basically the hunting side of it. And I was hired, and I moved out there in, I think it was the end of 2008, beginning in 2009. And I went out there and basically it was fun. And then the economy took a little downturn in 2009, and some things changed out there, and I moved back to Nebraska. And I don't know if you guys remember this, I delivered beer before I became a deputy.
Really?
So, yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yep, I was a beer delivery guy. I helped out on the long routes, and we delivered beer to small towns in southeast Nebraska.
We like to have well-rounded people with a variety of life experiences. So it just, goes to show.
There's kind of the full gamut there. So
absolutely. So you made your way back to Nebraska, and then you found your way to us. So what was it about law enforcement? What drew you into law enforcement?
As I mentioned before, I wanted a job that I thought would be exciting, that offered something different day to day. Also, obviously, to help people. That's a huge factor. I wanted something that would challenge me and eventually take me out of my comfort zone, which it definitely did. Going through the hiring process itself is pretty long and rigorous. And then there's interviews and tests and all kinds of physical tests, written tests. And so just kind of the whole deal there. I always had an interest in the sheriff's office. I grew up with some guys that had ended up working here before me. Mm-hmm. I also was lucky enough to grow up around some friends that had their dads worked for other agencies in the state of Nebraska, but I really was interested in the sheriff's office. Mm-hmm. And I'm from Lincoln, so that's a bonus to be able to stay here.
Right. So what do you do at LSO now? What's your primary duty?
We're all trying to figure that out, John.
Some days, there's a lot of days I'm not really sure. No, that was the first 7 years of being a cop, is trying to figure out what you're doing. And there's still some days that you ask that question, but learn how to overcome that.
So you started in patrol like a lot of us.
Yes.
Where'd your career go from there?
So I've been here for about 13 years. I started out technically my first assignment after FTO was in the civil division.
Oh, that's right.
And so there was myself and the two other guys I got hired with, one of us went to, the first guy took patrol, and then I took civil, and then the guy after me took courts.
Oh, that's right.
And so I actually went to civil, which was really interesting because I had literally no idea about civil. I learned a little bit about it when I got hired, about serving papers and stuff like that. But the civil division taught me a lot. I was in town most of the time, which is a lot different than our normal patrol area, the rural areas, the small towns. And so you learn about your officer safety very quickly because you end up in areas where, there's a lot more going on than maybe in a small rural town in Nebraska. And then you also are contacting a lot of people that generally have more contact with law enforcement, I would say overall, than maybe the average citizen does.
And you're not there to give most of them an award.
No, you're not there to show up to tell them how,
Yeah.
the things are going well or they're doing things right.
Right.
Usually it's something negative, or they owe somebody money, or they need to appear in a court somewhere for something. And so that was really eye-opening. I actually made a lot of arrests. I had a lot of fun in civil. I had my sergeant kind of said, as long as you get your papers served, if you want to do some other cop work once in a while, which was cool for me being new. So I went to civil first, and then I went to the patrol division after that, and I worked as a contract deputy in Hickman and in Waverly on a couple different occasions, and did that for a few years before I started helping out with some specialized spots.
Perfect. So what do you do now?
So for the last probably 7 years or so, I've been in the investigations division, and I'm the investigator for the interdiction team. And that's where basically there's a group of us, a sergeant and myself and a deputy, and then also Lincoln police officer. And we're assigned to the Interstate 80 primarily. And we do criminal interdiction up there.
Awesome. Well, we'll get into criminal interdiction, I'm sure, on a future episode a little bit in more detail. Sure. But one of your other specialized duties is also on the tactical response unit. How long have you been there?
I've been on the tactical response unit for 5 years.
Okay, so that kind of brings us full circle then to the armored vehicle that we're talking about today. But obviously something that you're not a stranger to.
No.
But let's get into the armored vehicle stuff a little bit. It's come up in the media, recently, Sheriff and Chief, yes, on, what they are, why we need them, why do we have them. So why do we need an armored vehicle here at the Sheriff's Office?
Well, especially in the county, a house could be all by itself without any cover for deputies to approach the house. And so it's really good to have an armored vehicle that you can make an approach to a residence that's pretty isolated and doesn't give or provide any cover in any other way. So that really is a unique need that we have in the county. And then whenever we have either a high-risk warrant service or barricaded gunman or a hostage situation, where, our first responsibility is keep our employees safe. And so, if we can do that with an armored vehicle, get them up close and personal and resolve whatever the situation might be, that's our goal.
Sure.
Yeah, if you got somebody down and they're behind a cruiser and it's a wide open area and you need to extract them, that is the perfect way, because as we talked before, if you try to go up there in a cruiser, bullet rounds, especially 223s, go through that like it's butter, and the armored vehicle will stop that, so you can get up there and get the help that the individual needs, if it's a citizen or if it's another law enforcement officer. And it also helps on, when somebody sees that piece of equipment pull up into their driveway or wherever it's going, the individual inside goes through their mind of, hey, they're serious, they're not going to go away, and I probably need to come out. And we have a lot of times that it does that, and that's the best way in the world, is they come out, nobody gets hurt, no, they don't, citizens don't, and the officers don't, and that's the best thing that could possibly happen with those. And God forbid if we ever had an active shooter and we had people down and we needed to get to them and close to them, what better way to do that piece of equipment that can stop a 50 caliber round coming at it. So yeah, it's. I hope we never have to deal with any of that, but it's good to know that if it does, we have the equipment that can save citizens' lives.
So, Jarod, as a team member, we've had an armored vehicle since you've been on the team. So what does that look like practically for you on an operation in the field?
So when I started out on the team, my first job was the driver.
Okay.
We actually had a different vehicle. Back then it was an MRAP, which is a military grade vehicle as well. It's a lot larger. It weighs over twice as much as a Bearcat does. It's just a bigger piece of equipment that the military uses. And so I drove that starting out, and really the armored vehicle it's probably the biggest asset to our team, in my opinion. We use it as a place to store equipment, so we can have all of our equipment at a scene that we need. As the sheriff mentioned, it's a piece of cover. And so we, if we have a situation where there's, firearms involved, or there is no cover, even if we don't know if there's firearms, it's unknown. It's a great spot to kind of have a point close to a scene that we know is safe, that we can be in. And then as the sheriff or as the chief deputy mentioned, we can use it as a rescue vehicle as well, which safety is always the number one priority, pretty much in every aspect of our job, whether it's a patrol deputy or investigator or a true team member.
If you want a challenging career, a career where you can make a difference in your life, your family's life, and the lives of those in your community, come and join the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. To learn more or to apply, visit us online at www.joinlso.com.
So let's talk about you mentioned the MRAP that we had, and we haven't always had an armored vehicle, Sheriff and Chief. So how did life look on our tactical response unit prior to the days of armored vehicles here at
we've always used surplus military equipment. Mm-hmm. I remember when we first formed the unit back in the late 70s, we used surplus military uniforms and sleeping bags and all shooting mats and all kinds of different equipment that the military was putting out for our use. And then, we needed a vehicle, sort of like what Jarod just said. You need a vehicle that's sort of dedicated, that can haul your team, that can haul some equipment. And we got a military ambulance, 4-wheel drive. We painted it so it wasn't, the camouflage. It had a little heater back there that could be used. And, we used that for a while. Now, it wasn't armored, so it wouldn't protect the occupants against gunfire, but at least it was a place where we could get all of our folks together, deploy them, and keep them out of the elements if that's an issue. So I can't remember, besides that old ambulance that we had, if we ever had any other vehicles assigned to the tactical unit.
The mobile command vehicle would be one of those, but that was more for your negotiators and
dispatcher.
And it would hold some equipment and
briefings and things like that.
But it certainly wasn't used in any tactical means. Mm-hmm. When I was on the team as the team leader, one of the things we reached out to armored car companies and just said, hey, if we were ever in dire need, and we trained with them a little bit, but they have their own downfalls on what they can actually do. So, it's a game changer on being able to have an armored vehicle. And in 2013 is when we first got ours, and investigator Jeremy Suarez worked pretty hard on getting that, and it was basically free to us. We went down to Kansas and picked it up. And
Fort Riley,
yep. And pretty much got on base. They gave us the keys and said, "Here's how you started," and all that. And off we drove back to Lincoln, Nebraska with it.
Mm-hmm. So, Sheriff, at the time, you took a little bit of heat on that for what was viewed by some as being too militaristic.
Too militaristic. That's the phrase. And people thought it was a tank. They thought it was armed. And it's armored, but it's not armed. So there's no kinds of offensive weapons attached to the vehicle. And so we did some public meetings. We brought we called it the ERV, the emergency rescue vehicle. Brought it there, let people look at it. Had a slideshow.
Yep.
I think with the paint job that we had put on it.
And changed the name, changed the paint.
Yep, the emergency lighting, the labeling. There was a sheriff's vehicle, emergency rescue vehicle. I think all told with radios, lights, paint, all that stuff, we had about $10,000 in that vehicle. And that's what we could afford at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was, as Jarod can attest to, it was tough driving that thing.
It was.
Visibility, the way the vehicle is shaped, it makes it difficult. And it's huge, it's heavy, it's loud. It doesn't stop on a dime. So, but nonetheless, if the police department needed an armored vehicle, we would bring the IRV out. If the state patrol or other counties needed an armored vehicle, and we let everybody know in surrounding counties that we had it and it's available if they need it.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the big game changers on what the vision of it was, what the public was done in 2015 in the floods.
Yep.
Exactly. I was just going to say that.
Rescuing people.
Yep.
Yep. One of our great pictures is Deputy Chrissy Worcester standing on the back of the RV, handing out a child whom they had rescued from high water when in 2015 when the South Bottoms here flooded.
Yep.
And it was not deep enough for a boat, too deep for most vehicles. And so the IRV was high enough and stout enough to be able to do that. And so they just drove it around, and people needed rescuing. We got them to dry ground. So it was really kind of a neat deal.
Yeah.
And when you compare, the bang that the taxpayers get, I mean, that was, like you said, all told, maybe about $10,000.
Yep.
Versus what would have otherwise been
$350,000.
$400,000 that we were able to make work because of that partnership with the military.
That's exactly right.
So there were some downsides to it, like we've talked about a little bit, and we were in a position then, Chief, to have some funding so that we could move to more of a modern armored vehicle that's designed specifically for law enforcement. So how did that come about?
The team came to me, and then we're talking about it. One of the biggest problems with the MRAP was some of the parts that were breaking down. We were having an extremely difficult time trying to locate and to be able to fix it. And it was beginning to nickel and dime us. So we began to look into the Bearcat at that time, and we had found out that piece of equipment is something that it's very needed in Lincoln, Lancaster. And with the MRAP not being reliable, we made the decision to go ahead and purchase that with FAC funds, which is money that is taken from criminals. So we did not use taxpayer money to purchase the vehicle.
Yeah, so about $350,000. Is it?
I believe it ended up being about $380 with all the equipment.
A little bit more,
Yep.
Okay, with some of the accessories. So,
Yes.
so I don't want to go all the way, down the road as far as how forfeited assets work, but for those people that are listening, you hear a lot of things in the media about that we're stealing people's money on the interstate. Jarod, that's a unit that you work with all the time,
Right.
For people that don't know, or maybe they've heard something else and they're wondering. Are we taking money just from anybody driving down the interstate?
No, it's there's a long process that goes into it, and there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes on that people the general public maybe not know or don't know about. When we're seizing money, when forfeited assets, it could be a vehicle, it could be currency, it could be other items, but usually it comes down to vehicles or currency. The forfeited assets is the proceeds of criminal activity. And that criminal activity can be anything from narcotics or drugs to human trafficking to theft to money laundering for bigger criminal organizations. There's a whole gamut of things, but it's criminal proceeds. They're the proceeds from criminal activity that we seize from criminals. And LSO specifically goes through a lot of motions to make sure that we're not taking somebody's money. We're not taking grandma's life savings. We're not taking money from somebody that's going somewhere to buy something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's exhaustive work. I do it.
Yeah.
For our team, I'm kind of the follow-up guy. I go through the cases and go through phones and listen to, jail calls and all kinds of stuff like that.
And I think the thing that people might not realize when they're reading the paper, hearing this on the news, is we can't tell the news the news media everything.
Correct.
You know, we can't tell them all of the information that we have on a case. So it's easy to paint a picture that, you know, that maybe this was just on a guess, that it might have been related to criminal activity or something like that. But
When
Chief,
you try,
help,
when you
help out.
try to further a case along, you can't be putting it all out in front of the public so everybody and their dog knows what's going on. They do exhausting work on the follow-up. We don't lose cases back. People don't come to us and say, "Hey, you stole my money." That doesn't come. They stay away, and they end up getting caught in other jurisdictions and federal cases, and doing all that. And it'd be really nice to be able to lay that out for everybody. But again, you can't do that because it's going to jeopardize the case, which we don't just stop, but the traffic stop here and the seizures of the dope or the money or whatever. We continue on. And if it's in another jurisdiction, no matter if it's in California, Florida, or New York, we're extending that out and working with the local and federal agencies in those areas to continue and keep working the case. Because once you start it there, it's a snowball. It
The
starts
wheels
to go.
turn.
Yeah, it goes quick, and you can not just catch one. You try to get the net and catch as many of the bad guys and put a stop to that organization.
Yes.
And it's not just narcotics. There was a catalytic converter theft ring. Mm-hmm. They were stealing catalytic converters in California. I got stopped on the interstate out here with a couple of thousand catalytic converters in a vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Which is a problem here locally, not just in California.
Well, exactly.
Absolutely.
And simply possession of a catalytic converter is not illegal.
Yep.
And possession of 2,000, while suspicious, is not illegal. So they were released and let go. And our folks worked that, determined where that vehicle was going to, got other agencies involved on the East Coast, and were able to make some arrests and stop that theft of catalytic converters from California. So there have been a number of cases like that. We've located kidnapped children, missing exploited children.
Credit card thefts.
Credit card thefts is a huge
Identity
one.
theft victims.
Yep. And the homicide case was a big one that we ended up working on. That down from Texas, where the individual killed his mother and had her in the trunk, and
Yes.
they went by us, and we were able to figure out that they had done that and got them stopped in Nebraska.
Yes. Yeah, and lots of firearms too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lots of stolen guns and firearms in the hands of criminals.
Well, I think the citizens of Lincoln and Lancaster County can be extremely proud of the work that you and your team are doing, Jarod, and the benefit that they derive from that, aside from Lincoln and Lancaster County being a safer place,
Yes.
is that we are able to provide some services and equipment that we wouldn't otherwise be able to provide at no cost to the taxpayer.
Correct.
And it's being done on the backs of criminals who are trying to perpetrate crimes here and across the country, and we're using the proceeds of those criminal activities to be able to make Lincoln and Lancaster County a safer place.
Yes. And I think it's worth noting too that there's the money that's seized, the currency itself, there's very strict guidelines on how that can be used for an agency. And so there's not a lot of, you're not going to see it being used for things that don't benefit our county and our citizens and our agency directly.
So speaking of benefiting our agency and some of those upgrades, tell us about the Bearcat and what are some of the things that we gained from that newer, safer technology?
So as Chief Houchin mentioned earlier, the MRAP had a lot of mechanical issues, and when I came on the team, I was kind of dealt those, and so I spent a lot of time dealing with those to keep the vehicle up and running for the team, because we used it quite a bit, or that we used it with the city and other jurisdictions, and so it got to the point where we realized we needed something that was more reliable and then more up to date. There's a lot of technology out there, so the Bearcat, it's smaller overall in size. It weighs not quite half as much as the ERV, the MRAP did. And it also has some other tools on it that allow us to do our job and be, as the sheriff mentioned, safe. Mm-hmm. We have it's a ram on the front that is used to breach. And so we can breach areas with that without going into a ton of details. But it just makes our job much safer. And there's
a person doesn't have to go up to the door
Right.
at that point in time. And, people need to understand we're not just driving that up there and banging
Right.
into the wall. We're giving it a lot of announcements. And that's another thing about the equipment that you are able to, on loudspeakers, everybody in the neighborhood knows what's going on, specifically
Yes.
the people in the house. And so we're not just ramming the door. We're letting everybody know, hey, we're going to be breaching. You need to get away from the door. And we do that numerous times prior to that going. So nobody's going to be able to say, oh, I got hurt because I didn't know it was coming.
Right, and it offers the same ballistic protection as the ERV did, but it's much easier to see out of and drive, and it's quieter, and so that makes it safer when you're moving in environments where there's a lot of people or it's more confined areas.
Well, there's a lot of neighborhood streets that have cars parked on both sides, and trying to drive that
Yes.
the MRAPs in there, it was concerning. And
Very tough.
Most of the time, when I was the commander of it, we made it that two people had to be in there to
Right.
driving it, just so that you had eyes on both sides and could see everything, just
Yes.
so you didn't have that.
Yes.
So how often are we using the vehicle? We got this in the fall of 22.
Yeah.
Yeah, just last year.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
So Chief, how often has this gone out?
29 times for different things. Some of it is for taking it out to the community. I believe trick or trunk.
Yep, trunk or treat.
Out there at the event center. The sheriff was out there, and we had it out there with him at that, and just letting the public look at those. So that's been a couple of them. We take it out during our trainings. The Lincoln Police Department takes it out when they train sometimes. Out of the 29, 13 of them were for actual call-outs where it was used for its purpose. 2 of them were with us on barricaded armed individuals. One was with on Nebraska State Patrol, again with an armed individual, and the rest of them were with the Lincoln Police Department, where they've requested the use of our vehicle for their tactical team since they do not have one.
Yeah. So certainly it's getting use on a variety of circumstances, some operations, but also just some public relations things, so people can see what they're getting.
And adults are really interested in it. Little kids just love it.
They love it.
So, both the ERV and the Lenco Bearcat have turrets. So, we can have a deputy or an officer in that turret. It's ballistic protected. It doesn't have any weapons on that turret, but, it can be cold outside. We can have the heat on in the vehicle, and somebody can be at the turret as an overwatch. And try to resolve things. So, yeah, people love it. When it comes out to an event, they really are curious about it. We had it at Waverly
Definitely.
at their event last year. We had the Bearcat out
I think
there.
it was a pancake feed.
Yeah, with the fire department.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jarod, how does having the Bearcat? We talked about how it makes our cops safer, but how does having the Bearcat make Lancaster County safer?
It, like we talked about, it offers, it's a rescue vehicle. If something really bad, if we have an active violence type situation going on, it can be used to move law enforcement closer to the threat, and it can also be used to remove people from areas like that. And there's capabilities. It can move things if you need it to. I mean, it's a big, heavy vehicle, other vehicles, doors, things like that. And then just the presence itself, as the chief mentioned, when that thing shows up, people know that we mean business. We're not going to leave. And that this isn't just your average, maybe patrol deputy or street cop showing up, that there's some other things going on. And a lot of times that's a deterrent in itself. And we don't have to use other methods to remove dangerous individuals from residences or cars or whatever it may be, because that's not a normal vehicle. Like, people notice it when you're driving around.
Sure.
It's funny to watch people when you're driving down the street. Everybody looks at it. Phones come out, and so it's got a presence in itself. That maybe I need to start paying attention to what I'm doing here, and sometimes compliance is the best option.
I gave you a hard time, but you mentioned that on a recent media interview,
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, the style of policing that we do at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, we are going to take voluntary compliance over anything else 7 days a week.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, we talk about it all the time. Time, talk, and tactics is what we use, and the Bearcat is part of the tactics on it. But yeah, if those are the ways we go about dealing with those situations. And I know when we were just talking about using the Ram, Orlando nightclub is the reason why they could get in there and save those hostages was because of the Bearcat and its ability to get through cement walls and make an entrance, because where they had those individuals, they could not get to the door, and they saved a lot of people's lives when they used that piece of equipment.
Yeah. Yes.
well, Lancaster County's now a population of over 300,000 people. I mean, it's a major community in the United States with a lot of business going on, major sporting events, things like that. And I think it's important for people to know that the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office is committed to providing services that members of the public expect and that they deserve. And that is just something that I think we've decided as a community that we should have the capabilities to respond to those types of incidents.
That's a priority. Yeah. Our community has made it a priority, and our goal is to keep everybody safe.
Yeah. Well, the sheriff is, like I said, we did take some heat on taking that equipment on. I'm so proud of him on what he did on that and was willing to do that, because I could not imagine going to a deputy's spouse's house or a family, knocking on the door saying they have gotten wounded or killed, and it was because we did not have all the equipment that we needed. And bad things can happen no matter what, but at least this way, nobody's going to be able to say, hey, we didn't try to do the best we can. And it wasn't because of our lack of forethought that caused somebody's injury or death.
Yes. Yeah. Well, very well said, guys. Final thoughts on the Bearcat or our armored vehicles in general.
Times have changed in law enforcement, and very rarely did you see armored vehicles in the 70s and the 80s. And law enforcement officers carried shotguns and revolvers. Weapons have changed for bad guys, and so we have had to keep up with the Joneses, if you would.
Adapt a little bit.
So we have adapted. We don't no longer carry shotguns on a regular basis. We carry patrol rifles. We carry semi-automatic high-capacity pistols as opposed to 6-shot revolvers. And this is just a good example of keeping ourselves safe from the increased weapons that bad guys have.
Yep.
Yeah, we can't go to a situation equal with them.
No.
Bad things are going to end up happening, and we need to make sure we have the superior equipment on and the ability. Because again, the compliance part of it, they see that they're like, I'm done. But if they think they have an opportunity or chance to escape and get away, and that means using their weapon, if they think they have a good chance, the odds of them doing it are so much greater than if they look out the door and go, I don't have a prayer.
Yep.
We don't want a fair fight.
No, and that's with the safety of certainly ourselves, but ultimately the public in mind.
Absolutely, you betcha.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, anybody who's willing to shoot at a cop is willing to shoot at a civilian.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Jarod, guys, thank you very much for the time today discussing the Bearcat. I hope that our listeners will maybe gain a little bit more insight as to why we're doing what we're doing when it comes to those things. So be sure to subscribe to the 902 podcast on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you enjoy podcasts to catch this episode and many others. You can also reach out to us on social media at LSO Nebraska or via email at lso@lancaster.ne.gov. And if you're interested in career opportunities at the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, be sure to apply at joinlso.com. Thanks for listening.